when you're ready. Okay. My name's Daniel Fight, and I'm going to be talking about what's in our river. Do any of you know what this is? This is the garra. It's the Indian version of our alligator. It's lived for centuries around the Chambal River in India. Now what you see are several examples of dead garra. And what these researchers are trying to figure out is what killed them. Okay, and what these researchers are trying to figure out is what killed them. See, it wasn't humans that shot them. It wasn't a more dominant predator species, and it wasn't a disease. What it ended up being was there was a parasite in the water, a toxicity that got into the kidneys of these beautiful reptiles and caused them to die. Now, if you look at the Chambal River, it doesn't look like a dirty river to you. Sure, factories, dams, human activity, nothing out of the ordinary. Quite comparable to our Illinois River, or maybe the Mississippi River. My favorite, the Jack's Fork River in Eminence, Missouri. Not too much is different, maybe size, but all in all, the water looked fine. Now, just because we don't have beautiful reptiles washing up on the banks of our rivers here in the States, we have problems too. And I'd like to propose to you that although you can't see them with the naked eye, there's issues in our river that need to be dealt with. So today I'm going to tell you about those issues and what can be done. What I'm talking about is an environmental phenomenon called hypoxia. Now, up here in Illinois, we don't really hear too much about this because we don't see the direct effects. But down in Louisiana, they're all too familiar with this. Now, the Louisiana Marine Consortium reports that hypoxia is found in every marine environment. Wherever there's water, there's hypoxia. But it's more prevalent where there's a lack of current, because the current will disturb this and thus reduce the hypoxia. For my purposes today, we're going to talk about the Mississippi River Delta, because everything we do here in Illinois ends up there. Okay, so what causes a hypoxia zone? High levels of nitrogen and phosphorus gather in a place and provide the beginning of this condition. As nitrogen and phosphorus all gather, there's obviously a very high concentration of them, which this provides an excellent environment for algae to grow. So it does. And it grows and it flourishes and it sucks up all these nutrients until they're gone. And then it dies. And when stuff dies out in the ocean, it goes to the bottom of the ocean. And when stuff's on the bottom of the ocean floor, it decays. And when stuff decays, it sucks up oxygen, and thus leaving the water in a hypoxic state. So, we're all human here, and you're asking yourself, who's to blame? Who's putting this nitrogen and phosphorus in the water? Let's go get them. But at the same time, you're probably wondering, why should I even care? What's the matter with this? Just, hypoxia, another condition. Well, the Mississippi River, Gulf of Mexico Nutrient Water Task Force tells us that nitrogen and phosphorus come from a variety of sources. They come from runoff from agricultural land, golf courses, even your lawn at home. They also come from erosion of soil that's full of nutrients, discharges from sewage plants, and the deposition of nitrogen in the air coming out of smokestacks and factories, as well as out of your automobile. And I could leave it at that. I could give you those 6 valid sources, which they are, but I'd be distracting the main attention from the main player here. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency annually reports that 70 to 75% of all nitrogen and phosphorus in our rivers comes from land designated from agricultural use. This being farmers put on too much fertilizer knowingly or unknowingly, or natural disasters such as flooding washing nutrients through the soil. So we've got farmers and we've got natural disasters. We have a hard time blaming Mother Nature. Let's go back to the Mississippi River Delta. The EPA first mapped a hypoxia zone in 1972, so relatively recent. But since then, there's been an annual cruise every summer where they go out and they map this area and learn about this growing problem. How big of a problem, you ask? Well, at its largest point, it reached the size of the state of Massachusetts. 22,000 square kilometers of a hypoxic zone out in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. And should this really be a surprise to us after we learn about what causes them? Well, I mean, the second largest hypoxic zone in the world, coming at the end of the third longest river, that drains 41% of the United States land area, that's nicknamed the Corn Belt. And in corn production, you don't want to know what nitrogen's called? King. So it really shouldn't be a surprise to us. But how do we get through to these farmers what they're doing? How do we get through to these people to get them to stop putting nitrogen and phosphorus in the rivers? Well, first, we need to know why it's a problem. This is why it's a problem. Here, we see dead fish, we see dead sea life, and that's what hypoxia zones do. A total destruction of the aquatic ecosystem and marine environment. Now, as you can imagine, this kind of pisses off the people in Louisiana that have fished the Gulf of Mexico for the last few decades, and rightfully so, because they aren't the ones putting the nutrients in the waters, but yet they're the ones who have to adapt their lives around them. So now on to what we can do to help. Well, first I should add that it's already started. See, when the EPA mapped that size of the state of Massachusetts out in the Gulf of Mexico, that was 2005. And it's never reached that point since. So voluntary actions from farmers and landowners have already started improving the situation. But there's still plenty of room for improvement. Now I could get into the specifics of minimal fertilizer plans or stream preservation mechanisms such as filtered strips. But the main point is, just be a good steward of your land. Think downstream. Everything that you're going to do is going to have a direct effect somewhere down the line. Now, frankly, I don't see many of you going out and applying fertilizer in the near future. But while I want to keep water conservation the main point of this presentation, I also want to maybe paint a new perspective of conservationism on your mind. Now, don't dismiss me as an agricultural enthusiast and sympathizer, but I know that a pretty gray picture is painted on farming practices here in the United States. And rightfully so in some ways, but I don't want you to leave here with another stick to throw in the fire. I want to propose to you that as new research is proven and new data is found and publicized, that people will change to more environmentally friendly practices. I mean, we've already seen that since 2005, right? I mean, before farmers knew how nitrogen moved through their soil and understood the science, before we knew that nitrogen and phosphorus caused hypoxia zones and death in the Gulf, they didn't know they were doing anything wrong. Think of it this way, the green emissions era. Do you think people running factories and had big smokestacks knew they were destroying our atmosphere until someone told them? I mean, sure, they're ugly, but until that data was publicized, do you really think they knew what they were doing? And now we've already seen change. You can argue it's because the government made them, but I'd argue that the government made them because they wanted to see a change overnight, and that doesn't happen with voluntary action. The University of Purdue, while studying the hypoxic zone in 2008 in the Gulf of Mexico, said the progress already made by farmers is noteworthy and heralds progress towards an improved era of fertilizer efficiency. This is just 3 years after that zone was the size of the state of Massachusetts. So I hope I've educated you on what's exactly the problem in our rivers and what we can do to help them. And I hope that I maybe painted a little bit different picture in your mind of how things need to be approached. I'll leave you with this. In 2010, the EPA, while studying the Clean Air Act and its results, said this: "We are burning 1.5 million tons of toxic waste less in 2010 than we were in 1990 while outproducing ourselves in that year." If we can improve on emissions, imagine how we can improve on water. Thank you.